Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing the book That Wouldn't Burn, written by Mark Lawrence. It's a fantasy and it's the first book in a new trilogy. I think this book is so creative and unique, and I think it's going to be one of the standouts for this year. It's a book I think will drag readers into it because of the concept. The main concept of this book is a vast library, an immense library that holds all knowledge. And I think that many people will be drawn into that, especially people who love reading and who like libraries. It's not the most gripping book. It has its moments, but there are slow burn moments going on in this story as well. But the world building and the character building and growth in this book is brilliant. The author's taken a lot of care, a lot of pains to make the world in this book so true and believable, and you do feel transported into this fantasy world. I think this will be a definite standout for this year. Now let's talk about the world the author's created, and it's very interesting. So we have this big city that's built around a mountain, and inside the mountain is a huge library, and it's massive, and the library holds all knowledge. And I mean all knowledge. It's so vast, nobody knows all the books that are there. And there are rooms people can't get into, rooms people haven't been to for years. It's a massive library. The city itself is developing quite quickly. And it develops quite quickly because people or librarians find out different things in different books in the library. And this knowledge helps them improve the city in different ways. And the improvements happen very quickly in this story. And the city is protected by big walls. Outside the city, it's different. It's very desolate. There are basically no water around, no trees around. It's just dirt, rocks and dirt. And the people who live in small settlements outside the city are called dusters. They're called dusters because there's so much dirt and dust around that they're thought to be dirty and dusty all the time. And these dusters have a very hard existence. People in the city, it's quite luxurious compared to people who live in these small settlements. People in the settlements struggle. They struggle to feed themselves all the time. They're very small settlements, and they're farming settlements most of the time. And it's just a very, very hard existence and hard life for these people that are called dusters. One other thing about the city that I forgot to mention is that's where the king resides. And he bans books that don't agree with his point of view about the world, basically. And books that they find that agree with his point of view, he promotes. And he promotes that knowledge to be read all through the city. So it's interesting that we've got all this knowledge that people can get to, but a lot of it is just banned and restricted. So those concepts tie into things that happen today in today's society. Also in this world we have an enemy, and this enemy is called the Sabbers. The Sabbers are a dog-like humanoid race, and they're described as being very violent, very greedy, basically evil as well. They're so violent that they're described that if they come across humans, they'll kill humans on sight no matter what. And the humans hate the Sabbers. They're taught to hate the Sabbers, and the Sabbers are also told and taught to hate the humans. And it's an ongoing war, basically, ongoing battle between these two races. At the start of this book, we meet Livira Page. Livira lives in a small settlement outside the city. She's a duster. She's going along doing chores during the day, and she's daydreaming. She wants out of the settlement. She wants a better life. She daydreams about going to the big city, about having a good life, where she's not, worrying about food and worrying about safety all the time. Suddenly she sees a stranger, and this is a big moment because nobody comes to their settlement. They don't have visitors. They don't have strangers coming. As the stranger approaches, they realize it's a Sabber, and so it's panic. It's panic stations in her settlement. Everybody's running around trying to escape. A group of men try to attack the Sabber. The Sabber fights back, and the Sabber is a brilliant fighter, way better than all these people trying to attack him. Livia gets knocked out, and then when she comes to, she's in a chain gang basically. She's walking with other children from her settlement, and she's being led by a sabber, so all these children are being captured. She was daydreaming about escaping the settlement. Now she's being allowed to leave the settlement, but she's a captive. Suddenly, they're attacked by somebody else, and they're attacked by soldiers from the city. These soldiers are able to fight back against the sabbers and rescue the children, free the children. But now the soldiers have these children to take care of, so there's only one option: take them back to the city, and they'll be allocated tasks to do in the city. And in the city, tasks are allocated like a caste system. So basically, the richer you are, or the more powerful you are, you get the better roles in society. If you're a duster coming into the city, you're going to get the lower tier roles. That's how this whole city is built. So when Livira arrives at the city, she's thinking, she's not sure about what she's going to get, and she's told that dusters get the worst jobs. But a couple of things happen, and suddenly she finds herself being accepted to be training for a librarian in this huge library. And it's very, very shocking because at this point in time, Livira can't read or write at all. We have another main character called Eva, and Eva is living in a huge chamber in a library. And he's living in this chamber with other people his own age, 3 other people. There were 4 other people, but one has gone missing, presumed dead. And they don't know where he is. Could be buried underneath a stack of books, because in this chamber there's huge piles of books, stacks of books everywhere. And Eva and the people he lives with are all around about 20 or so years of age. And they've been there for a few years now, but they all came out of this contraption called the mechanism. They're not siblings, but they think of themselves as siblings, but in reality, they vanished in this mechanism over time, decades apart from each other, but they all vanished as children, and then they were spat back out by the mechanism the same age as when they vanished. So when they came out, they were around about the same age, so they think of themselves as siblings. And they're cared for, or looked after, or looked over by these 2 constructs, one called the assistant and one called the soldier. And these 2 constructs seem to just have a task of caring for these 4 or 5 people at the start, who are now 4. Eva and his siblings are worried about 2 things. They're worried about attacks by sabbers, so even though they're in this chamber and they think nobody can get in, they're worried that one day sabbers will get in and attack them. Also, they're worried about these things called the escapes. And the escapes are beings that seem to come out of the mechanism, and they're dark beings, they're black in colour, and they're very violent. And once they come out, they do 2 things. They try to attack people in the chamber, and also if they get a hold of books, they seem to feed on the knowledge and the words in books and grow stronger. That's just so creative, I think, in this story. There are so many things in this story that are so unique and creative. The interesting thing about Livira and Eva, our 2 main characters, is while they're both in different situations, Eva in this big chamber in the library, and Livira who lives in the city itself but is now a trainee librarian, they're both so curious people, and they're both not content with not knowing. They want to know more. They want to go outside boundaries more and more. And it's because of this the story progresses into, I guess, the next stage of this book. They both find their way to this area called the Exchange. And the Exchange is an area where different parts of the vast library can merge together, basically. You can travel from one part of the library into this exchange, and you can exchange books, basically. So think of it as it's built as a big book exchange. But not just an exchange between the same period in time or the same realm or the same world. The exchange allows you to go back in time, forward in time, and I think it even allows you to go to different dimensions, different worlds. I won't go into the plot in any more detail, and I don't know if I've given enough detail away about the plot or the story itself yet, but if I advance further into the plot past Eva and Livira meeting in the exchange or give too much away. But all the things after their chance meeting in the exchange become very interesting. There's so many different threads happening in this story, and the author did a great job in just being able to navigate all those threads and bring them all together into conclusion, which is a good conclusion in my opinion. The world building in this book is just wonderful. The author takes so much care in describing the world. You feel like you're there. You feel transported in this world. You see everything the characters are seeing. You feel what they feel. You go through what they go through as they're growing in this book. And I just found the world described so well, in so much detail. It was just great world building in my opinion. The characters are so well done in this book. There are so many characters you can engage with. Livira for me is the most engaging character. I liked her growth in the story. I like seeing this character who couldn't read or write, who was living out in a settlement called a duster, who wasn't expected to have much in her life, suddenly be accepted to be a trainee librarian, learn how to read, learn how to write, be so curious that she's breaking out of her confines a bit, trying to discover new things all the time. And that character is so engaging and so gripping. I guarantee in this book you will like Livira. I also enjoyed the whole concept of the library. I found that so fascinating, and I think it'll be one of the things that draws a lot of readers to this book. A lot of people out there, I think, just love the thought of a huge library that you can walk in for days and maybe get lost in if you're not careful. That there's so many books there that nobody knows how many books there are, but everybody's sure that whatever thought you have, whatever idea you have, there's a book there that supports it, matches it, or will help you advance your ideas and thoughts more and more. That whole idea of a vast knowledge base, knowledge source that has all knowledge on Earth or in this world is just amazing. I love that whole concept in this story. But while this book is a great fantasy book and a great first book in a trilogy, it also talks about a lot of concepts that are present in today's world, in our world today. It talks about the restriction of knowledge, about banning certain knowledge, about trying to ban books from being read by people. It talks about power and how knowledge can be used for good or evil, how knowledge also increases people's power. It talks about that as well. Also talks about xenophobia, hatred of other people just because you're told to hate them, because you think you should. Also talks about differences in society, about people who are out on the outskirts of society, not trusted, just because they live on the outskirts, things like that. So it talks about a lot of themes in this book. I think the author did a great job in getting those concepts from today's world into this fantasy world. Livira is my favourite character in this book. She's so tenacious, she's so curious, she's always asking questions. At the start of this book, she asks questions after question after question after question, and it's comical for the reader. It annoys the other characters in the story, but for the reader, it is comical moments, and I just love the fact that she's so curious. I love the fact that she doesn't take no for an answer. She wants to learn, she wants to know things, wants to understand things, and all those traits just make for a great character in this book. Eva is interesting as a character. He's not as gripping as Livira, and I think it's because of his storyline. In his storyline, sometimes it gets bogged down, becomes a little bit tedious. It's not as fast-paced or as gripping as Livira's storyline. But it's interesting because he's not an expert at anything. His siblings are. They're experts at different things. He's not. He's like a blank slate in a way. And so when he learns things because he wants to learn things, not because he's being forced to or told to, but he wants to learn them. So in a way he becomes more understanding of different ideas, different concepts in his world. And that idea of him being more understanding of different things in his world makes for an interesting character and an important character in this story. Ute is a head librarian who takes an interest in Livira, and he's responsible for Livira being accepted as a trainee librarian. He's a very interesting character because he's so different from everybody else in the city. he looks different, and he just stands out a lot in this book. I liked him. I liked him because he's so mysterious. There's all these things going on about him that you just want to find out about. You want to learn more about Ute as the story goes on. In my view, he's a little bit like Dumbledore from the Harry Potter books, because Dumbledore was a bit mysterious as well in the books. So Ute is that mysterious, wise, older character that seems to be there to shape and mould a young person and lead them through a different direction in their lives. And I like that in this character. This is a very interesting book as a first book in a trilogy, and I think it will be a standout book for this year. It's so creative, it's so unique. There are so many elements in there as well going on, so many threads, but the author seems to be able to merge everything so well in this story, blend everything so well, and make a tidy conclusion. The author also makes this feel so real, because the world building is so good and so detailed. Also, the characters are developed so well. Their story arcs are so compelling. The main character, Olivia, especially, is a great character in this book. I rate this book a 4 out of 5. It's very interesting. I want to read the rest of the books in this trilogy. I also want to go out and read more from the author. Even though I do like fantasy, this is the first Mark Lawrence book I've read. I've always walked past his books in the library or seen it in bookstores, but I've never actually picked one up and read it. But now I will. I'm going to go back and read the books in his catalogue. On my channel, I review other fantasy books. If you're interested in fantasy books, check out my channel and subscribe. I also have a fantasy playlist on my channel. It should be on your screen now.